former Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini has hailed the magistrate for being impartial in her case. Dlamini says she hopes that the magistrate will not be victimized for not jailing her. She has been sentenced to 4 years imprisonment or a 200,000 rand fine. The ANC's Women League president was found guilty of perjury after she lied under oath at a 2017 inquiry looking into the SASSA debacle.
Magistrate imazi nje esasebenza kakhulu ngezinto zabantwana ngazela kude futhi magistrate uyamazi ucomrade wena amazi but wenze inhliziyo yami yaba nethemba kakhulu kubantu besifazane umshayile kakhulu comrade umshayile yabona mangabe ushayile but at the end wangenza nami ngayitshela ukuthi mangabe ngisuka lana I'm going to do my best, work hard and ensure that we have decisive women abangatshelwa emaceleni ukuthi abenzeni and ngisaba even ikusho lokho ngikushoyo ngaye because I know it can work against her. Banga appoint abanye babe amajaji ngenzeka asale ngaphandle but lento eyenzekile yenza ngibelieve ukuthi we need more women in decision-making bodies.
Now, Dlamini also took the opportunity to call on members of the Women's League to stand together and not be influenced by factions.
Njoba siya ema-conference in ANC, into engithandayo ngala ma-comrade bayazi ukuthi i-priority yami amakhosikazi. Ngiyacela asihambe siyokhombisa i-confidence kubantu besifazane. Kuma-branch asibakhethe, kuma-region e-ANC asibakhethe, kuma-province asibakhethe, and singavumi ukudonswa ukuthi sifave elinye side against elinye, and singavumi ukudividwa because there are some that know that the membership of the women in the ANC are more than 60%. And therefore, if we are more than 60%, we must be divided. We must never agree to that. What happened during local government elections must never happen.
Let's discuss this even further now. We're joined by Anesu Dera from the Center for Applied Legal Studies. Anesu, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. You, right at the start, were very heavily invested in this matter, representing the Black Sash and presenting evidence against the minister. What is your immediate reaction, especially as we listen in to what the former minister had to say as she addressed crowds outside?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Perhaps, our immediate reaction to this is, to simply say, this is like a final step on a long road to accountability. That is our immediate reaction to this. Why am I saying this? Is obviously the sentencing and the judgment, are highly commendable, in the sense that, they're setting good precedents on holding public officials accountable. So I think that is one thing we should acknowledge first. Then secondly, the reason why I'm saying that, finally, it's a long and the final step, to accountability is the fact that I think we shouldn't really forget that it took about 4 years, right, before the NPA decided to prosecute the former minister. Even though at the end they finally decided to prosecute the former minister, but having a situation whereby the NPA takes 4 years to prosecute public officials, it's worrying. But ultimately, they executed their constitutional mandate, and we had a president which has been said that public officials in this country can be held accountable for violating different constitutional rights.
What would you say this decision demonstrates for the sort of moral standing that public officials should embody?
Well, if I can quote, right, the words of the magistrate, right, she said that, the former minister knowingly and intentionally disposed of false evidence. Now coming back to your question, this decision simply shows that, public officials, number one, are expected to be honest, right? The number two, they're expected to be people of a high level of integrity. Then also number three, the issue of accountability. They're supposed to be accountable to the different constituents, in which, they serve. So if you're a minister, you're supposed to be accountable to your portfolio. You're supposed to be accountable to the people of South Africa, and, not be involved, in trying to focus so much on serving personal interests or even serving political party interests, for instance. So public officials, even though you are a member of a political party, but once you've been appointed in a public office, then you are expected to be transparent to everyone, in South Africa, despite their political affiliation. Then you are expected to be honest, and you are expected to be truthful in all your dealings.
We also heard the former social development minister saying that she hopes that the magistrate Khumalo will not be victimized for not jailing her. Do you think that the final outcome was, justified in terms of, the 200,000 Rand fine or 4 years behind bars?
Okay. Thank you so much on that, right? I think really, from my side, the most important thing really is this president that has been said, right, of holding public officials accountable. Then, on the other hand, I'm mindful, of the fact that this case was heard in a regional magistrate court, and regional magistrate courts are creatures of statutes, which means that, they have like certain limitations in relation to sentences they can impose, or fines they can impose. I haven't really dwelt or tried to analyze much in relation to what the relevant statutes say. But yeah, on the other hand, I think going forward, right, the first win here is that public officials can be held accountable. But going forward, I think there is a general sentiment from the public that, the threshold for punishment should be a little bit harsher, and some public, and some people from the public, are kind of giving a comparison to the recent case of, a student who was sentenced 5 years in prison because she received some NSFAS money by mistake. Yet, in this particular instance, every public official whom the magistrate said knowingly and intentionally disposed of false evidence. So that kind of comparison, say we have a student here and then we have a public official here and knowing intentionally, and kind of fraudulently, misleading or disposed of false evidence. So then the public, sentiment is that, the threshold in this particular instance should have been perhaps harsher.
As you make mention of the role of a public official and perhaps that the sentence should have been harsher, was the former minister duty-bound in her position to show remorse? Because Magistrate Khumalo did point out, she was scathing about Bathabile Dlamini's conduct, saying she has shown no remorse for her actions. Yet outside of court, it seemed that her tone had changed.
You see, that's kind of, also, controversial because, number one, right, the fact that, you knowingly and intentionally mislead, creatures or institutions which are put in place by the Constitution, right, is problematic in the first instance. Then, after doing such kind of thing, after violating the Constitution, the least thing we would expect from a public official is some form of, remorse, right, to show that, violated the Constitution and, I'm remorseful in this regard. So yes, as you are saying, the sentiments aired by the magistrate that, there wasn't any show of remorse in this regard. It is why I said, perhaps as a result of that, a stricter or a harsher sentence was supposed to be in that regard. I think in herself, she knows. That's why she's saying that the magistrate shouldn't be intimidated for giving an option of a fine. Why? Because, a prison sentence would have been harsher in this regard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in on that outcome there. Of course, speaking to Center for Applied Legal Studies, Anesu Dera, weighing in on the sentence against the ANC Women's League president by Magistrate Betty Khumalo.